Captain Elias Kane stood on the bridge of the USS Vigilant, staring through the haze at the narrow blue throat of the Strait of Hormuz. It was supposed to be a demonstration of power, escort a few tankers, remind the world who still owned the seas. The carrier strike group loomed behind them like steel gods. Drones hummed overhead. Everyone back in Washington had called it routine. Contact, the radar officer said calmly. Multiple low-flying signatures. Shahid class, coming in fast from the Iranian coast. Kane smirked. Engage. This is why we trained. The first wave was easy. Phalanx guns chattered, missiles streaked out, and half a dozen cheap Iranian drones vanished in fireballs. Cheers rippled across the comms. But then came the second wave, faster, lower, smarter. Some carried no explosives at all. They were decoys, drawing fire while others slipped through. A third wave followed, launched from hidden trucks and fishing boats that had melted into the coastal traffic days earlier. One drone clipped the Vigilant's superstructure. Not fatal, but it shattered antennas and started a fire that forced damage control teams topside. Another struck a nearby destroyer, punching a hole clean through the hull near the waterline. Oil from a damaged tanker ahead began to slick the water black. "Sir, they're not trying to sink us," the XO muttered, eyes on the tactical display. "They're hurting us, making the strait too expensive to use." By nightfall, the real cost became clear. Iranian speedboats and coastal batteries had seeded the shipping lanes with smart mines. Nothing fancy, just enough to terrify insurers in London. Tanker captains, watching their Lloyd's rates spike to the moon, simply turned around. One by one, the massive hulls reversed course, leaving the U.S. Navy escorting empty water. Global markets didn't wait for headlines. Oil jumped to $150 a barrel before dawn. Gas prices in America climbed toward $5. In Asia, factories began shutting lines as LNG shipments from Qatar dried up. Fertilizer prices, tied to the same energy web, started their own quiet climb, threatening crops half a world away. Admiral Hargrove, aboard the Abraham Lincoln, ordered a push, clear the strait by force. But every attempt met the same asymmetric grind, drones by the hundreds, cheap as toys, against billion-dollar ships that couldn't afford even one lucky hit. Minesweepers were too few and too slow. Allies offered polite words but no hulls. They had their own energy nightmares to manage. A week later, Kane watched from the rail as the Vigilant limped eastward, away from the strait. The Great American Armada wasn't retreating in flames. It was simply irrelevant. The choke point had closed not because Iran had won a grand naval battle, but because the price of keeping it open had become unbearable. A few dozen drones, some speedboats, and the cold math of insurance had done what no enemy fleet ever could. Back in Washington, briefings spoke of tactical successes and measured responses. But in ports from Rotterdam to Shanghai, the tankers stayed docked. The oil stopped flowing, and the world quietly learned a new lesson. Empires don't always fall to superior weapons. Sometimes they collapse because the narrowest stretch of water decides the bill is too high and hands it over. The Strait of Hormuz didn't roar. It simply refused to open.